I turned off the highway and almost drove into my own name hanging from the gate. Monroe Ranch auction today only. Red letters on a white banner. Strangers' trucks lined both sides of my north pasture. Tires sinking into grass I had spent the whole spring reseeding. A big white tent flapped in the breeze. Folding chairs. Aibales, people in boots and ball caps walking around with bidder numbers taped to their shirts. At the center of it all stood Karen from the HOA. Green vest, white blouse, clipboard clutched like a badge. Talking into a microphone while a speaker on a stand crackled her voice across my land. I killed the engine and sat there a second feeling my jaw tighten. I had been gone 8 days, a bridge inspection job in Denver that was supposed to take 12. We finished early. I decided to surprise my cows and my coffee pot by coming home ahead of schedule. Instead, I found my front pasture dressed up like an estate sale. A man in a cowboy hat was pointing toward my barn, telling another guy that all the old tractors were in the first lot. Someone else was pacing off the distance to the creek, like they were measuring property lines for themselves. I stepped out of the truck and dust puffed around my boots. A woman in sunglasses glanced at me, then waved toward a patch of dirt. "Parking area is over there, sir," she called. Before I could answer, Karen spotted me. She lifted the microphone again and tried a professional smile. "If you are here to register for the auction, please check in at the table by the tent," she said. "Only approved bidders pass the rope line." Her eyes slid over me without recognition. In jeans and a faded ball cap, I was just another stranger to her. Then I walked to the corner stile, swung over the fence, and landed in the pasture on her side of the wire. Now, a few people were staring. Karen frowned and marched toward me, clipboard held like a shield. "Sir, this is a controlled area," she said. "Only Pine Ridge participants are allowed inside the auction grounds." "Karen," I said, "you are standing on my ranch." For a moment, she just blinked. Then she put it together. The hat, the truck, the face from the end of her subdivision. "Mr. Monroe," she said slowly, "you are back early." "Yeah," I answered. "Looks like I missed an invitation to my own auction." She lifted her chin like she was already bored of me. As I explained in the notices, she said this area is part of the Pine Ridge, common property parcel. We are liquidating unused land and abandoned equipment to cover years of unpaid assessments. If you are not a registered bidder, you need to step back for liability reasons. "Notices," I repeated. "Karen, I have been gone 8 days, not 8 years. You disappeared," she said. "The board considered the property abandoned." I looked around at the creek, the barns, the herd footprints in the dust. "Cows do not abandon themselves," I said. "Show me the foreclosure order. Show me one paper with a judge name on it." She hesitated just long enough. "Our attorney has everything," she said. "We followed the covenants. You lost your rights when you refused to join the HOA. That is not how land works," I answered. Her jaw tightened, and I saw the move coming before she made it. The phone came out of her vest pocket. She turned slightly so the crowd could hear. "911, what is your emergency?" came the faint voice from the speaker. "Yes, this is Karen Sloan, president of Pine Ridge Estates," she said. "We are holding a lawful auction on our community property. An aggressive trespasser just stormed in claiming he owns everything. He is frightening bidders and refusing to leave. Please send an officer." A few people stepped away from me like I had pulled a knife. I just shook my head and pulled out my own phone. I scrolled to the county clerk and recorder direct line. "Hey, Monica, it's Nate," I said when she answered. "Quick question, who owns parcel 1742-603 off? County Road 12. Keyboard clicks came through the speaker. "Still you, Nate," she said. "Warranty deed from your dad, 09, no transfers recorded after. No foreclosure deeds either. I do see a lien from Pine Ridge filed last month. But there is no case number and no judgment attached." Looks sloppy. "Any foreclosure case open under my name?" I asked. "Nothing here," she said. "You want me to give the sheriff office a heads up?" "That would be great," I said. Across the field, Karen was still talking loudly into her phone about my supposed threats. As if on cue, a siren wailed in the distance, and a county SUV rolled to a stop by my fence. Deputy Lane climbed out, dust rising around his boots. He glanced at me, then at Karen, then at the banner and the tent. "Afternoon, folks," he called. Karen rushed him like rescue. "Officer, thank goodness," she said. "That man crashed our auction and is trespassing on HOA grounds. We foreclosed this land for unpaid dues. We need him removed." Lane looked from her to me again. "Nate," he said, "you want to tell me your side." I handed him a folded paper from my back pocket. "Start with this," I said. "My deed to the ranch." Lane unfolded the paper and read in silence. "Deed of trust. Legal description. My father's signature. Mine." Karen hovered beside him, arms folded. "It does not matter," she said. "We have a lien." We followed process. The board voted. Lane raised a hand for quiet. "Mom," he said, "I need to know one thing. Do you have a court order giving the HOA title to this parcel?" She blinked. "Our attorney handled it," she said. "This is community property now." Lane spoke into his radio instead of arguing. "Dispatch," he said, "can you check with the clerk on parcel 17? 42603 ownership and any foreclosure." A pause. Crackle. Monica's voice came faint but clear. "Still shows owner Nathaniel Cole Monroe," she said. "No foreclosure cases. No sheriff's sale. Only an HOA lien with no judgment." Lane nodded and looked at Karen. "So right now," he said, "the county says this land belongs to him, not to Pine Ridge." She flushed red. "You are taking his side," she snapped. "I am the one who called 911. He is disrupting a legal event." Lane glanced at me, then at the watching crowd. "Far as I can tell," he said calmly, "he came home and found strangers on his ranch." He turned toward the tent where the auctioneer was shuffling papers nervously. "Sir," he called, "is this sale backed by a court order?" The man in the cowboy hat and sport coat swallowed. "The association assured me everything was in order," he said. "I saw a lien document." Lane shook his head. "A lien is not a deed," he said. "You cannot sell what you do not own." A murmur rolled through the bidders. A couple of them set their numbered paddles down like they were hot. "So are you shutting us down?" one of them asked. "Yes," Lane answered. "Until a judge says otherwise. This is private property and the owner is standing right here. Everyone who is not invited by him needs to clear the field." Karen exploded. "You cannot do this," she yelled. "We will sue the county. We will sue you. He owes us years of dues and penalties." I finally spoke up. "I never owed you a cent," I said. "My ranch was never part of your subdivision. You slapped a lien on land you did not understand and tried to sell it while I was out of town." Lane looked at her again, more stern this time. "Also, Mom," he said, "when you called 911, you said this man was aggressive and blocking people from leaving. All I see is you yelling in his pasture. False reports are not a game." Her mouth opened and closed. I felt threatened," she said weakly. "You walked toward him with a microphone," Lane said. "For now I am documenting this as a civil dispute. But I strongly suggest you end the auction and talk to a real lawyer." The auctioneer started gathering his papers, calling out that the sale was postponed. People drifted toward their trucks, muttering about wasted time and maybe calling their own attorneys. I stood there watching them leave, angry, but also curious. If they thought my north pasture was common property, what else did Pine Ridge think they owned out here? When the last bidder truck rattled out through the gate, the field felt twice as quiet. Only flattened grass and a few plastic cups on the ground proved there had been a crowd at all. Karen stood near the tent, shaking with anger. Her volunteers in matching green vests glanced at her, then at me, then began pulling stakes from the dirt. The banner with my name sagged as one side came loose. "This is not over," she muttered loud enough for me to hear. "The board will fight this." Lane closed his notebook. "Mom," he said, "for your own sake, talk to someone who specializes in property law before you plan another event out here. For now, this auction is done." He turned to me. "Nate, you want us to trespass anyone who comes back?" "Not yet," I said. "I need copies of that lien first, and I want to know exactly what they filed." He nodded. "Clerk already emailed me a scan," he said. "I will forward it to you. If they bother you again, call us." When the county SUV pulled away, I walked slowly under the sagging banner into the trampled grass. Anger was still hot in my chest, but behind it, another feeling was growing. A cold, precise curiosity. How did Karen convince herself she could sell my land? I knew pieces of the story. 15 years ago, my uncle sold the back 40 to a developer. Those platted lots became Pine Ridge Estates. The purchase contract and subdivision plat were clear. The only property subject to their covenants were the numbered lots and a small park. The rest of the ranch stayed whole under my dad's name, then mine. Karen had moved in long after all that. From her porch, she saw wide-open fields and assumed they were all part of her kingdom. I went to the house, duffel bags still in the truck, and pulled my file box from the closet. Deeds. Surveys. The subdivision plat my uncle had shown me before he died. At the kitchen table, I spread everything out and traced borders with my finger. Here was parcel 1742603, 620 acres including the north pasture and creek and barns. Here was the separate map for Pine Ridge. Tiny puzzle pieces cut out of one corner. And nowhere did any line cross into the rest of the ranch. My phone buzzed. An email from Monica at the clerk office. She had attached the lien Karen bragged about. I opened it and read every word. Pine Ridge Estates homeowners. Association claim of lien against property known as Monroe Ranch, it said. Legal description followed, and I felt my eyebrows rise. They had copied the full ranch description, off an old tax bill, and slapped it into their form. As if by writing it, they could pull 600 acres under their thumb. No mention of a court order. No exhibit showing unpaid dues. Just a signature from Karen and a notary. I took a slow breath. They had not only tried to sell my pasture, they had clouded the title of the entire ranch with a bogus document. This was no longer just about shutting down an auction. This was about cleaning their handwriting off my deed forever. Next morning, I drove straight to town. Not to the feed store, but to a brick building with a small sign that said, Law Offices on it. Inside, behind a desk stacked with maps and dusty binders, sat Lydia Chen. People in 3 counties called her the property hawk. She motioned me to a chair and listened without interrupting as I laid out the story. The auction, the fake foreclosure talk, the lien Monica had emailed. When I finished, she pulled the document toward her and read it twice, then leaned back with a slow smile. This is ambitious, she said. They tried to lien 600 acres with one lazy form. No amounts itemized. No court case. No proof of debt. They recorded it anyway. Congratulations, Nate. You are sitting on a textbook example of slander of title. Slander of title, I repeated. She nodded. When someone files a false claim that clouds your ownership and costs you money, that's slander of title. You can hit them for damages, attorney fees, and a court order wiping this thing off the books. I asked her if the auctioneer was in trouble, too. Depends, she said. If he knew they had no judgment, he could lose his license. If he was just gullible, he will still run from another Pine Ridge job after this. She picked up a pen. First step, she said, we send a demand letter. Then we file suit if they are stupid enough to ignore it. The letter she drafted that afternoon was short and sharp. It stated that I was the sole owner of Monroe Ranch, that the Pine Ridge HOA had filed a knowingly false lien against my property, and had attempted to sell portions of it at a public auction while I was away. It demanded they immediately release the lien, publish a notice of correction, and agree in writing that their covenants did not and never would apply to my ranch. If they refused, we would sue for slander of title, fraud, and abuse of process. She mailed it certified to the HOA post office box and emailed a copy directly to Karen's address for good measure. 2 days later, the reply came. Not from a lawyer. From Karen herself. Your accusations are outrageous, she wrote. The board acted in good faith to protect our community from your neglect. We will not be intimidated by legal bullying. The lien stays until you pay what you owe. Lydia read it and actually laughed. Good, she said. She just admitted the board made this decision alone. No mention of counsel. She wants to own it. We will let her. She slid a new stack of forms across the desk toward me. Sign here, she said. We are suing the HOA and Karen personally. Filing the lawsuit did not magically change the pasture overnight. The grass was still flattened in spots where trucks had been. My name still showed faintly in the dust where the banner had hung. But beneath the surface, gears started turning. Summons were served on the HOA registered agent and on Karen at her front door. Neighbors saw the papers, and news traveled faster than any official notice. At the next HOA meeting, the room was packed. I sat in the back by the door at Lydia's suggestion, silent, just watching. Karen stood at the front in her usual green vest, reading from a prepared statement about a frivolous lawsuit brought by an ungrateful neighbor. She said the board had authority to treat adjoining lands as community areas. She said the auction had been an effort to recover years of nuisance costs. She said anyone who did not support her was siding with a man who endangered property values. Then Ruth raised her hand. Ruth lived in the first house on the right, an older woman with sharp eyes and a softer voice. "Is it true," she asked, "that you never went to court before planning the auction?" Karen frowned. "Our lawyer said a lien was enough," she answered. Lydia stood then and addressed the room in a calm, even tone. "I represent Nate," she said. "I can tell you your lawyer never signed the lien, never approved the auction, and has already informed us in writing that he warned the board about overstepping." A ripple went through the crowd. Ruth spoke again. "Did you tell us the sheriff supported this?" she asked. Karen shifted. "I said we had followed procedure," she replied. Ruth turned to the neighbors. "We almost bought our own neighbor's ranch out from under him," she said. "We drove our trucks into land that is not ours because we trusted one person to read the rules." Heads nodded, some slow with dawning anger. Someone else asked about the 911 call. "Why did you tell dispatch that he was violent when every bidder says he just stood there and talked?" Karen sputtered about feeling threatened, about not knowing his intentions, about community safety. But the room had already tipped. When Lydia finished explaining slander of title in simple words, how a false lien could wreck my ability to sell or borrow, and how much that could cost in court, more than one neighbor looked suddenly worried about their own dues paying the bill. By the end of the night, a motion had been made to suspend all enforcement actions involving the ranch until the case was resolved, and to form a committee to review Karen's decisions. The vote passed by a wide margin. After that meeting, Pine Ridge got very quiet toward my fence. No more letters. No more green vests pacing by the gate. Only the occasional sideways glance when I drove past the subdivision sign. Behind the scenes, though, Lydia was busy. She sent discovery requests, asked for board minutes, emails, copies of every notice they claimed to have sent. When the first packet arrived, she called me into her office. "You need to see this," she said. Printed emails lay in a neat stack. At the top was one from Karen to the board a week before the auction. "If he is stupid enough to leave town," it read, "we can treat that as abandonment. Once the trucks are in his pasture, there is nothing he can do except sue. And nobody around here wants a lawsuit." Next was the audio file from the 911 call. The recording department had sent it for the civil case. We played it on her computer speakers. "This is the HOA president at Pine Ridge," Karen said on the tape. "The man is screaming and blocking people from leaving. I fear he may become violent." Lydia paused the track. "Every witness says you never raised your voice," she said. "We will let the jury hear this." Deposition day came a month later. We sat in a conference room at the courthouse annex. Me, Lydia, a court reporter, and across from us, Karen and the HOA attorney, who now looked much less confident than he had in previous letters. Under oath, Lydia asked simple questions. "Did you obtain a court judgment before recording the lien?" "No." "Did you receive legal advice that a lien by itself did not transfer title?" "I don't remember." "Did you tell neighbors the sheriff supported your auction?" "Yes." "Did the sheriff office ever issue anything in writing to that effect?" "No." Then Lydia played the 911 call. "Is that your voice?" she asked. Karen shifted in her chair. "Yes," she said. "At the time of this call, were you facing Mr. Monroe?" "Yes." "Was he shouting?" "No." "Was he blocking vehicles?" "No." "Were you in fear for your physical safety?" "I was upset," she answered quietly. "Upset and afraid are not the same in the eyes of a jury," Lydia said. No further questions. When we left the room, Karen's attorney pulled Lydia aside. I could not hear every word, but the tone had changed from defiant to worried. That evening, my phone buzzed with a new email from Lydia. "They want to talk settlement," she wrote. "Come in tomorrow." Next morning, I sat across from Lydia at her conference table. Her legal pad was open but empty. A good sign. "They know they are exposed," she said. "The insurance carrier is scared of a jury hearing that call and seeing that lien. So here is what they are offering. First, they will file a full release of lien on your entire ranch. Second, the HOA will sign a recorded agreement stating that their covenants do not now and will not ever apply to your land. Third, they pay your attorney fees and some damages for slander of title." She slid a paper toward me. It was a draft settlement summary. At the bottom, a number bigger than I expected. Not life-changing, but enough to cover the hit my property value could have taken if that lien sat there. "There is one more thing," she added. "They want a confidentiality clause. No interviews. No social media rants. No talking at HOA meetings about how you beat them in court." I sat back and looked out the window at the courthouse lawn. I pictured a year of trial. Neighbors dragged in as witnesses. Time away from work and from the ranch. Risk that a jury might go sideways. Then I pictured the lien erased. The record set straight. Karen forced to sign. A paper admitting she never owned. A single blade of grass beyond her own fence. "What happens to her?" I asked. Lydia smiled. "I cannot negotiate what her neighbors do," she said. "But from what I hear, the recall committee is already sharpening its pencils." In the end, I took the deal with one change. I told Lydia I did not care about gag orders inside their meetings. If a neighbor asked me quietly at the fence what really happened, I was going to tell the truth. She went back and forth with their lawyer for a week. When the final language came through, it said no press releases, no public shaming campaigns. But private conversations were my own business. We signed in a small room at the mediation office. Karen sat across the table, eyes red, jaw clenched, hand shaking as she put her name on the release of lien and the non-application of covenants. She never looked at me. When it was done, Lydia walked the document straight to the clerk. Within an hour, the lien in the computer showed as released, and a new recording sat beside my deed. Statement of non-encumbrance by Pine Ridge Estates. My land was clean again. Summer settled in. Grass grew back over the ruts from the auction trucks. We cut hay and fixed fence and hauled calves to market. For a while, everything felt like normal ranch life. Word still traveled, though, quietly, across back porches and along sidewalks inside Pine Ridge. At the next annual HOA meeting, I did not attend, but 3 different neighbors later gave me the same version. Members lined up at the microphone, not to complain about trash cans or paint colors, but to ask how the board had nearly sold off someone else's ranch, and how much that mistake had cost the association. Karen tried to spin it as a misunderstanding. She said the lien had been just a precaution, that the auction had been arranged before she understood all the facts. Then Ruth held up a printed copy of the email where Karen called my absence an opportunity, and the room finally saw in black and white what kind of game had been played. The recall vote that night was not close. A new board stepped in, quieter people who liked their homes and their neighbors more than they liked power. One afternoon, Ruth came to my gate with a pie and an apology. "We should have asked more questions," she said. "We saw your pasture and assumed it was just unused space at the edge of our world. We forgot someone lived here before all of us." I leaned on the top rail and nodded. "Paper matters," I said. "Deeds. Plats. All that boring stuff in drawers. If anyone had pulled one map before parking their trucks in my field, none of this would have happened." She laughed softly. "Well," she said, "if anyone around here suggests another auction, they are getting handed a copy of your lawsuit instead. These days when I drive past the entrance, the only sign hanging from my gate is the one my grandfather carved. Monroe Ranch. No trespassing. The fields beyond it are still mine, not because I yelled the loudest, but because I could prove it. If an HOA letter has ever made you doubt where your boundaries are, remember this. They can type your name on all the forms they want. They can hold meetings and raise hands and print banners. But unless the law and the land records say otherwise, your deed is not up for auction just because someone in a green vest decided it was